start by saying thanks to Rob and Aaron for inviting me here today. Um, my name is Suzanne. I'm faculty at the University of Delaware, but today I'm wearing my hat as the director of the pilot projects program for ACCEL CTR. So as you may have seen, hopefully you've seen, we have a call out right now for what we call our clinical and translational pilot grants program. So this is our primary, we have a number of different grant funding mechanisms through the CTR, but this is kind of our big one that comes out annually that we like to see a lot of applications and we like to fund a lot of awards for. Oops. Let's go to the next slide here. And just for those of you that may not know very much about the CTR or ACCEL is one of those programs that is specific to IDEA states. So kind of similar to INBRI or similar to COBRI. It's a program that offers pilot funding through a number of different channels. And the specific mission for the Delaware CTR is to accelerate clinical and translational research that addresses health outcomes for Delawareans. We support two different kinds of pilot programs. We kind of sort them into one of two buckets, one of which we just call regular pilots. So this could be a research project on any number of different topics that span the translational spectrum. And another pot that we sort of categorize in its own, which is community engagement pilots. And these are projects that are specifically working with a community or group of individuals, or it could be lay people in the public, or it could be clinicians, but sort of non-researchers, and they engage that community throughout the research process. Eligibility. So to be eligible to serve as a PI for this award, the PI has to be from one of our ACCEL or CTR partner institutions, and those institutions are shown there down on the bottom of the screen for you. You may know that we are currently still partnering with MUSC, the Medical University of South Carolina, but for this fall, the awards will be given in our new year, assuming the CTR is renewed, but I think the chances of that are very good. And starting in our new award cycle, MUSC is not going to be part of the CTR anymore. They want us to be sort of very Delaware centric. So you have to be from one of these four institutions. You also have to have a faculty appointment or whatever the equivalent of that is at your institution at the time of the award. I guess I'll just point out, because I had a question about it the other day, if you are someone or you have a colleague who is currently in a postdoc position, but you know that they will be moving into a more permanent staff position or assistant professor or instructor type position, by the time that the award is given, they can still apply. You just need to be in that faculty line at the time the award is given. Which is many months from now. We'll get to that a bit later. And then the project needs to fit under this very big umbrella of clinical or translational research, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. A couple of other notes about eligibility. You can't concurrently have funding from multiple IDEA programs. So for example, if you already hold an INBRI pilot, you can't have a CTR pilot at the same time, or vice versa. So what that means is if you have one and you get awarded another one, you're going to have to pick which one you want to keep, but you can't have both at the same time. And also can't overlap, budgetarily with other ongoing funded projects you have. And relatively new, just within the past couple of years, we've also opened projects up to have to use a multi-PI model. I tossed this slide in here just to get back to that issue of, I said this broad umbrella of clinical and translational work. And I wanted to just show you all this because everybody has a little bit of a different definition of what translational science is and what constitutes translational research. And so we use a definition which is provided in the call that really talks about translation spanning this whole broad range, all the way from very, very basic work to very, very clinical and, in fact, population level types of studies. So I always try to say this because I think there's a misconception that the CTR, although we're very interested in clinical trials, clinical projects, and community engagement projects, we also do fund and are equally interested in the basic work. So way over here on this side of the spectrum, where the work may be in animals, it may be cells, molecular work. It could even be kind of modeling of those types of systems. Next slide here. Budget. The budget is the same whether you're applying for a regular or a community engagement pilot, just to say $80,000. It's just that for community engagement pilots, we break up that $80,000 across 2 years. And the reason for that is just a very simple one. We've just found over the years that the community engagement pilot projects usually have a little bit of a lag time before they can really get underway and rolling. So they just tend to take a little bit longer to complete. So we just kind of, as a blanket rule, started funding those over 2 years. And the budget is typically used to support personnel like research coordinators, maybe grad students or postdocs, supplies, travel, maybe reimbursement to participants, things like that. And we try not to fund salary of PIs, for example, and we ask, because we primarily want to be supporting the research, and we ask that units and departments try to contribute as much to the PI salary as possible. We do have some particular funding priorities. So projects led by junior PIs are prioritized for funding. Also projects that are very interdisciplinary in nature or have components that span multiple regions of that translational spectrum I was just talking about. And then projects that address specifically the medically underserved or conditions disproportionately affecting Delawareans. But since I'm here talking to the GIN, let's spend a little bit of more time talking about projects led by junior PIs. So what does it mean to be a junior PI? We at ACCEL CTR, if you meet any of these descriptions on the slide here, you would be considered junior. So somebody who is in the assistant professor rank or equivalent, someone who has no prior history of NIH funding. Maybe you have had some NIH funding in the past, but have not reached an R01 level of funding at NIH yet. You would be considered junior, or somebody who hasn't received prior ACCEL funding before. So all of those would be considered junior PIs in the eyes of ACCEL. And then kind of one more point to make about junior PIs is specifically if you fall in this category here in the blue font, if you have not previously received an NIH K series or R series award as a PI, then what you'll be doing with your CTR application is you're going to be applying for a mentored pilot award. And so what that means is you need to identify a research mentor, and when you submit your preliminary application, you need to include their name and their bio sketch along with that. And you're going to engage with the professional development corps to try to, before the full application is due, to come up with a development plan for yourself, and your mentor is going to come up with a mentorship plan. Okay, and I'm whizzing through things just, for time, but definitely anyone can stop me if they like. And I'm also happy to, take some questions afterwards. What I wanted to point out is, because this is new from last year, is that we now have a 2-stage application process for these pilots. And the first we're calling the preliminary application stage, followed by a full application stage. So the preliminary application stage, so that's the one that we're working on now. That's the one where applications are due soon. What you need to submit is just a single page structured proposal summary. And I'll talk about what that entails in just a minute here. Those will be reviewed by a group of leadership in the CTR, and then the top scoring proposals from that group of applications will be invited to submit a full application. At the full application stage, if you're invited to submit one of those, then you're really submitting your full proposal. So that will be formatted similar to an NIHR series application. The actual research component is a little bit shorter, and then we tack on a few more sort of CTR specific components that we ask applicants to address. Let's talk about the preliminary application, because that's what's coming due soon. So all you need to have at this point to submit a preliminary application is you need to provide us with the names and the biographical sketches for yourself as the PI, any co-investigators you're working with, any mentors, if that's relevant to you, consultants, if that's relevant, and if you're doing work more on the community engagement side, if you have any community or clinical partners that are going to play an integral role in your project. So you'll provide names and bio sketches for those folks, and then you'll submit your structured proposal summary. So as I mentioned before, this is just a one-page document, and I'll just quickly, there's really detailed instructions about how to do this on the RFP, so take a look at that if you haven't yet. But just for the purposes of this quick talk today, I just wanted to point out that it's not quite the same. It's a one-pager, but it's not quite the same as like a specific aims page, in that here you're writing for really a broad scientific audience. So don't assume when you write the structured proposal summary that you will be writing to people who have content expertise in your area. So you're writing to scientists who have, broad knowledge of foundations of science, but they may not have expertise in your content area. So, write with that in mind. And this is really just sort of a succinct outline of your project aims, also the significance and approach. And then you're also going to kind of touch upon what your expected outcomes are and how this is going to help you continue in your professional development and what your sort of next grant application might be if this one is successful. I make a note to really read the instructions carefully. And as I said before, this is the one that has a deadline coming up real soon. You have a little bit more than a week to get that submitted. And you're going to submit it on the dashboard on the ACCEL website. Okay, let me take just a minute and talk about the full application stage. So as I said before, after all the preliminary applications are in, they'll be reviewed, scientifically reviewed for merit, and the top ranking ones will be invited to move on to the full application stage. So again, you're going to include the names of all your team members and include their bio sketches. And here you're going to do really more a full proposal like you would in an NIH grant. So you'll have a specific aims page, you'll have a research strategy component that has significance, innovation, and approach. That's all just like NIH does, except ours is no more than 4 pages. And the other piece that we have tacked on in recent years is because the CTR has, as one of its missions, community engagement, we do ask you to write a little blurb about community engagement. Now, if you're doing work that's really in this community engagement space, you're going to have a pretty detailed community engagement plan. Who are you engaging with? How? At what time points? What is the role of the community partners, etc.? If you're on the other end of the translational spectrum and you're doing more basic work, don't let this community engagement paragraph sort of scare you away. Really, all you need to identify if you're on the more basic side of things is that you need to identify how your work could down the road impact communities. So who are the communities that you think down the road might benefit from your basic research? And when would be the appropriate time to engage with them? Okay. Doesn't have to be very much if you're on this more basic side. And then, of course, there's some other sort of forms that you need to include with the application. Human subjects forms, vertebrate animals forms. We do require a letter of support, at least one, from your department or unit head. That's required, but you may need or want to provide other letters of support from collaborators or consultants or things like that. And if you're in that new investigator category, that group of people who I said you'll be doing a mentored application, at that point, you're going to include your individual development plan and your mentoring plan and a letter of support from your mentor. And again, follow all submission instructions, really read through the RFP and the application instructions in detail. Because at the full application stage, we're going to follow the NIH rules, which is if you don't follow the requirements, your grant will be administratively withdrawn without review, which nobody wants to have happen. So make sure you meet the page requirements, make sure you meet the font and margin requirements and all those little details. Okay, and so there's lots of time between now and when those are due, and that's so that when you find out that you're invited to submit a full application, which will be sometime probably around the end of April, you have lots of time to engage with your colleagues, your mentors, as well as some of the cores at CTR that might be able to help you build your full application and make it even better than you might on your own. I'll just quickly skim through this slide, just so you know, we use at the stage of the full applications, we use sort of a NIH study section panel meeting structure to review grants. We have a scientific merit review panel who will look at the scientific merits of the project, but we also engage statisticians, as well as the professional development core and the community engagement core, as appropriate, to look at things like mentorship plan and quality of the career development plan, and for community engagement programs, what the community engagement plan is. We give a score based on significance, investigators, innovation, approach, environment. If you've ever submitted an NIH grant, those are the same scoring categories they use, and then overall impact. And really kind of these two things on the bottom here are the keys to that overall impact. Is the work that's proposed going to exert a sustained, powerful influence in the field? And is there potential for this to develop into a successful NIH proposal? I should say a high degree of potential. Okay, last little tidbits here. As I mentioned, you've got this great time period of all of May and all of June to really beef up your application. And we ask you to engage as often and as early as you like, hopefully early, all of these other cores. So we have the PD core, which is the professional development core, led by Rob here, who will help you with grant writing, mentorship, and career development. And if you fall into that new investigator status, I believe the group, you guys can tell me in a minute. I just have, I think, one more slide, whether I think flight school is still running, and that will be going to help you sort of craft your application. There's also the BIRD, which is the Biostatistics, Epidemiology, and Research Design core. They're there to help you with any design issues or questions or consultation methods, stats. They also have access to some really great large electronic databases that you guys may have spoken about before, some clinical, some research. If you want access to those, you may want to engage the BIRD early. And then the CEO core, Community Engagement and Outreach core. We do recommend that everybody, even if you're not doing a community engagement research project, to speak with them about how they might engage the community, maybe earlier than you thought you might want to. And certainly if you're doing a community engaged pilot, you'll want to talk with that group early on. There's some important dates and deadlines. This is all on the RFP. On the first slide, I think I gave you my name and my email address. Anyone can feel free to reach out to me at any time if they have questions or concerns. The RFP is available on the ACCEL website. Reach out to me for anything you might need. And that's it.